Grand Island Independent, which is the district's designated method of giving notice at these meetings. We want those in attendance to know that copies of the Open Meetings Act are available at the entrance to the boardroom. If anyone in attendance is interested in addressing our board, you are welcome to do so. We simply request that you complete the appropriate form and turn it in to us so that you may be recognized during the requests to address the board part of our meeting. If you have not already completed the form, please see the staff person outside the entrance to this room. Public comment is welcome. We do ask that no signs be brought into the boardroom. Mrs. Dibbert, would you please call the roll?
Mr. McFarland.
Present.
Mr. Hawley has given prior notice of his absence. Mr. Garcia Mendez. Present. Mrs. Albers. Here. Dr. Mann. Present. Mr. Barsonas. Yes. Mrs. Douglas. Here. Mrs. Wilson. Here. Mrs. Goodman. Here.
The first item on the agenda tonight is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is to be approved as follows. Items number 3.1 to 3.10. This is the consent agenda as published. Would anyone like to remove any items or add any items to the consent agenda? Seeing none, does anyone have a potential conflict of interest on agenda item number 3.3? Okay, at this point, Ms. Albers.
I will be abstaining from voting on check number 106708 on agenda item number 3. I approve all other items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'd like to make a recommendation to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second by Ms. Wilson. Discussion? Seeing none, may we proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Okay. Next up, item number 4.1, State Civics B Champion and Qualifier, Barr Middle School, Mr. Jess McHarg.
I'll just take a minute to talk about what the Civics B is, and then have our two students come up and talk maybe a little bit more and answer a few questions. But the Civics B is to inspire young Americans to engage in civics and to contribute to their community in one way or another. At Barr, I'm excited to say that we had 7 finalists that went and competed at the Regional Civics B in Kearney. 2 of them placed, Maya Burnell and Nora Hilligus, who are here with us this evening. And then one of them, Maya, went on to actually compete and then win at the Nebraska Civic B and will now represent the state in Washington, D.C. Just a few notes about this. Mr. Fisher had sent an email saying that Nebraska is going to be doing this for the first time, and it would be a great idea to get involved. And I said, okay, let's do it, right? The boss man says go, so we go. And so after twisting the arm of our 2 social studies teachers, I said, I'm going to need you guys to do some writing. And I said, don't worry, though. We have write tools. It's a great format. You just fill it in. We'll make it happen. And then, if you didn't get a chance to read the article, one of the teachers was introducing it to the classroom, and he started talking about, like, I think we can do this. And I think you, and I think Maya would say, he pointed directly at her, could do this and could win, so put some effort into it. And so I'm just pleased to present them to you this evening because they did it. And it's an amazing thing, fun to be a part of and to celebrate with them. And so without further ado, I would welcome Maya Burnell and Nora Hilligus to join me up here. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, but Maya said she's ready to answer questions. She's been doing it, and she's really, really good at it, as she's proven. So, girls?
Ms. Albers.
I'm just curious how you came up with this interest in doing first of all, doing the competition, but then also, was this just a knowledge base that you already had, or did you study? Tell us a little bit about your game plan.
So we learned about like a bunch of the civic topics like early first semester, and then you kind of like, they gave you a study guide to study about all the topics, and then you just went from there.
We were like assigned writing the essay, so we wrote that and we got to write it about whatever we want. So we were obviously passionate about whatever we chose. So that passion kind of made it so when we got to the actual competition and it came to this studying, which we got some of the knowledge from class and some from the study guide, it made the studying a lot more fun.
Any other questions? All right. Oh, Ms. Wilson.
I was just wondering what you wrote about.
I personally wrote about the Tyson plant shutting down in Lexington.
And I wrote about how teenagers don't have enough spaces to be able to find community and how their isolation leads to rises in mental illness.
All right, ladies, we've got some certificates that we're going to present. Come up front here.
All right, we're gonna take a quick photo. Yeah, there we go. Smile and hold it. I'm gonna take a bunch, all right? And then hold it. Families, if you want to get any photos, you sure can.
And when is the national?
October 11th.
October 11th.
Okay. Subject number 5, request to address the board. I don't believe we have any this evening. Okay, on item number 6.1, clarification regarding the instrumental purchases from the June 11, 2026 board meeting. Mr. Matt Fisher.
Gosh, you're welcome to stay. It's exciting stuff. Okay, just wanted to do a quick clarification. At our June board meeting, we approved the purchase of instrumental music equipment. And during that discussion that we were having around that, question was asked about what students receive instruments free of charge. And, you know, in the exchange that took place, I think there was a little misinformation that was shared, and appeared that we provide those instruments for everyone regardless of income, and that's not accurate. We do have guidelines that would indicate that if students qualify, we do provide those instruments. They fill out a form, and then the form is reviewed, and if they qualify, then the instruments are provided. Our intent is always, you know, again, to work with families in whatever way we need to assure that all students are given that opportunity. And so there's a number of different situations that occur. But again, we just wanted to provide clarification that it's not necessarily that we're providing instruments for every student. So any questions around that? All right.
All right, item number 6.2, strategic plan goal number 3 update. Dr. Amanda Levos and Mrs. Von Gernstein.
Good evening. Dr. Summer Stevens, and tonight, just real quick, Dr. Kohler has been working directly with the leadership team on Strategic Plan Goal 3 over the course of the last year, and working really hard through the work of the Profile of a Learner, which really is creating a North Star and thinking about when we do all things related to that work, and I'm going to say that profile that we build, that's really the crux of who we're trying to help grow on the other side, coming out the other side. And wow, thinking about the presentation, albeit short, of the work that just happened with the young folks from BAR doing the work of the civics contest, I just wrote down several words, but passion, community, and connection. The girls said passion and community. And as you'll see here in a few minutes, as Dr. Levos presents, they have hit the 4 attributes of the profile just in what they shared tonight. And so if we do that, and we do that with everything that we do in learning, they were articulate and they shared really great information, and they're in middle school, and so going into high school. So without any further ado, tonight Dr. Levos is going to take you through the introduction for the first time officially of the Profile of a Learner.
Perfect. Hopefully. There we go. Except for. All right, good evening. I am excited to kind of be here on behalf of our committee around the work that's been done around the strategic plan goal number 3, where the 100% group. That 100% of students will have a plan after high school. And you can see all these people were fighting me to be able to present to you today. But they're all really passionate about the work. Kara is here, but here for another presentation as well. But we had a great mix of district Neal administration building administrators, elementary, middle, and high school that were part of this team to really dig into that. We were all really learning. And so to identify what that foundation would be for the strategic goal, we really wanted to think about that profile of a learner, think about what do we value most for our learners, what are like the future demand of them, and what are those traits, skills, and characteristics that are important for their success, not only now while they're with us in Uganda Public Schools, but then after. And so that started with input from stakeholders through surveys and focus groups. And so we had almost 2,800 students, staff, families, community members, and educational partners that shared their perspectives around what those traits, skills, and characteristics should be or could be. With that, the feedback was used to draft our profile of a learner. And then focus groups were brought in to have deeper conversations, right, of what this really meant and how this should be defined, and was refined in the characteristics in the profile that you see today. We have 4 characteristics. We did a lot of wordsmithing, as you can imagine when doing this type of work. But it really came down to these 4 characteristics of a profile of a learner: adaptable learners, confident communicators, problem solvers, and responsible contributors. And one of the big things for us as we defined those and wrote kind of short descriptions around them is, can a preschooler from a senior in high school see themselves within these 4 categories of a profile learner? And that was a yes. Now, what does that look like? We're not there yet, right? What does that look like for a preschooler to be having experiences and learning about this? What does that look like for a senior in high school and everyone in between? So our timeline for the 26-27 school year is really sharing this profile of a learner to all of our stakeholders, since it's in its finalized state. We have plans to take it to lead GIPS and do some different activities with our district leadership just around where do they see themselves personally within this learner profile, where do they see students, staff, and then community and the impact there. We know that some of these characteristics and details are already taught within some of our pieces of our curriculum, and so really identify where it is, and then where do we have gaps in areas that we need to further develop out experiences for students to be able to learn, develop, and experience these skills. And then continuing to work with our Leading for Learning team on the alignment within our curriculum and different documents. It's already in our professional learning community PLC progression. So teachers, as they're analyzing and doing their work within PLCs, are going to see that. And hopefully curiosity will be there and reminders there to be able to open up that document and have further conversations of what this looks like. Future steps is continue thinking what are the specifics from preschool to high school on those experiences. How do we provide opportunities for self-reflection and goal setting around these 4 areas? And then what is that system? Going back to then our goal of a plan after graduation from high school, what do those plans look like? How do we monitor those? How do we, what does that look like as a system? And so we have one step in a very long process to be able to get to the 100% of students there. But what we feel is we've gotten a lot of stakeholder input on this, and it's something not only for our students, but something we as adults need to continue to think about. How do our actions, behaviors, and the way that, how are we modeling these for students as well? Because it's not only what happens in the classroom, it's what students are seeing on a day-to-day basis as well. So with that, I will leave it open for questions, and if I can't answer them, Carrie Kohler's here, and Kara, and Summer.
Dr. Mann.
I'm learning. I know. Thank you.
He's learning. Yeah. From his community.
Remedial. Remedial. I'm excited about the process that you've engaged in, and I think the outcomes are going to be even more exciting. One thing that sticks out to me or strikes me as interesting is in your first sentence, share the profile of a learner and the characteristics with all stakeholders. Stakeholders of the Grand Island Public Schools community proper, or are we talking about stakeholders within the Grand Island community?
Within the Grand Island community, because they were part of, we had business and different key stakeholders that were part of this, took the survey and were part of that. So we'll start with our groups that meet within Grand Island Public Schools and then see where it goes next for the community as a whole.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Ms. Albers.
How did you find the stakeholders? Did you go through Parent Advisory Council or key communicators and any other places? Or just those 2?
Carrie will come and help answer that question.
We sent it out through newsletters, so it went out to all of the families, the Parent Advisory Council. We sent it to all of our higher education partners and people that we work with. We sent it to all students that had graduated from senior high that we had emails for. We sent it to current students. We sent it to current staff. Advisory boards through senior high. That's all.
I would say our biggest feedback completion for surveys was from our students, which I think is really promising too, because they're the ones who are going to be living this and who are being most impacted by it. So
how many people from the community ended up serving on this?
The survey is over 2,800 took the survey.
Okay.
The focus groups, I don't know how many people served on focus groups.
Our highest rate was staff and the focus groups.
Okay.
We had quite a few students as well. I would say parents and business, we didn't have quite as many from those areas, but the staff and students were highly involved.
And those are students that are currently enrolled. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Thank you for all the work that you've put into all of this. I'm curious as to like, and if you don't have them all ready to share out, that's completely understandable, but I'd be curious to know just more about each of these like 4 areas, because they're pretty wide scoping, as you mentioned.
Yep.
And I guess you don't need to go through all of the little
Yeah,
pieces,
yeah.
but just a little bit of tidbits about each of them would be appreciated.
Yep.
And then I'm curious, I know you said that you're wanting to measure this, and I guess curious as to what are current like tools that you're looking at of like how to measure this, or maybe you haven't found them yet.
Yeah.
And also like the system to monitor progress. I think that's one of the things that's super interesting, especially like, I don't know if this will be part of that monitoring of the process, but will you try to look at it like, okay, once they have a plan, they graduate, boom. Is there gonna be like any after, like follow up, like a year from now, like we touch base with their students and this is where they're at? I guess if you could walk through those 3 things.
Yeah, so I'll start with the definitions. We do have a very brief, like 2 to 3 sentence description of each of those that can be shared with you. Just kind of a high level, adaptable learners are students who learn and apply their learning and learn from mistakes, right? Take risks. Confident communicators, they're able to express their ideas clearly and confidently and use a variety of resources to do that, right? We're not just one way, there's multiple ways, right, that students, that we all communicate with our messages, and advocating for themselves through communication, right, and contributing positively to group and community interactions. Problem solvers, that they can ask thoughtful questions, develop creative, collaborative, and evidence-based solutions, have that curiosity to be able to think critically, but also use their resources, right, because we all need those thought partners or be able support to be able to be a problem solver. And then responsible contributors, that they take ownership of their learning, actions, and growth, respectful, ethical, and thoughtful choices, consider the well-being and safety of others. I think some of the write-in ones that they were able to write in, we gave them in the survey like multiple different traits, characteristics that they would chose their top 3, and then had write-in. Respect and like kindness were the top write-in ones, and so we tried to embed those within these different ones. So there will be lots more on that and forward-facing documents around that. And then what does that look like student-facing, right? Like it's to get that in front of students. So that's that question. The other question around, I think that's why it's on future steps, developing a system to monitor plans. There's lots of like different departments have plans for students. When you think about students in our special education department that have plans after graduation in high school. We have students with internship, all those types of things, like taking stock of what we're already doing and what that could look like and how that could look, again, personalized learning too around that. So we don't have the answers there yet. That's why our team will have to continue to research and look and see what that's like. And again, I think you're right. If the plan is about students thriving after graduating from Grand Island Senior High and being, contributing, responsible contributors, that's about their involvement within the Grand Island community, the community in the, in general. It'd be great to follow up with them to see how they're living those out. So, no specific answers, but lots of different ways we can look at. Students are surveyed all the time, which questions within those surveys align to these that we can utilize some of that data as well. So,
anything else? All right. Well,
thank you very much. More to come, like always.
Okay, item number 6.3, 6 to 12, ELA resource adoption. Ms. Kara Kuhl.
always the nerve-wracking part. Okay. Great. All right. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. I am here to talk about our upcoming secondary ELA resource adoption cycle that we'll be entering next year. And most specifically, I want to talk about just our plan for how we're going to kick that off next year, because we have some exciting things coming up. So first of all, I'm going to bring us back to something that I think you've probably become very familiar with over the past year as we've just gone through this process with K-5 math. This is our selection process that we have in place in board policy that just clearly outlines the steps that we go through any time that we're getting ready to do a resource adoption. This work is led by our Leading for Learning team and our curriculum coordinators, and then we have our task force or selection committee teams that really select the resources so that we can eventually come before the board and make a recommendation for what we want to pilot and eventually adopt. And so basically talking about why we're starting this process now. As we think about 612 ELA, we have been using our current instructional resources for about 10 years at this point, which is it's a pretty long time. We have initially adopted our resource, My Perspectives, in the 2016-2017 school year, and then we've done a couple of 3-year renewals in there to keep us going with that. But next year is going to be our official end of access for those materials. So this is our time that we need to make some decisions and do some things now. It's a great opportunity for us to do a thorough needs assessment of our current resource and really determine what's going to be best for our students and classrooms as we move forward with this. So our current instructional resource, it has been serving us well. In full transparency, however, when we look at our longitudinal data for 612 ELA, we're not seeing the growth that we necessarily would want to see. When we think about having that really ambitious strategic plan goal of our students meeting 80% proficiency and meeting standards by spring of 2029. At the same time, our state has launched a historic focus on literacy through the National Literacy Project and the Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant. That's the CLSD grant, which I'll be referencing. That's a mouthful, but the CLSD grant. And so really to ensure that we're being good stewards of those funds that we've received from the state, we want to be incredibly intentional about how we proceed with this resource adoption over the next 3 years, so that we're really making sure we're supporting our secondary literacy team to have that impact on our student data that we want to see. So that's going to bring me back to this selection process that we have outlined in the board policy, and I want to speak more to our plan just specifically for next year, the 26-27 school year. Because it's been almost a decade since we've adopted resources or ELA resources at the secondary level, we want to be really, really intentional with this. The world of literacy instruction has changed pretty dramatically in the past 10 years with our knowledge around the science of reading, and all of those things that we know. So we really aren't wanting to rush into this process. We've got a lot of learning and a lot of team building that we need to do with our 612 ELA team so that we're really positioned to make some solid decisions as we move forward. So really for this next year, 26-27, we're really focusing on steps 1, 2, and 3 and really calling this our research, our needs assessment and research phase for this. We're gonna dig into our data, really determine our needs and review those potential resources to pilot then the following year. But again, like I said, because it's been so long since we've adopted, this year is really more, it's about more than just checking off steps on this list. Again, it's purchasing new materials alone is not going to impact students in the way that we need. We know we need to do more around building teacher capacity, leadership capacity, to really have that impact on our student data that we want to see. So for this upcoming school year, we're really going to be digging in together, as I mentioned, learning around the science of reading, really digging into what constitutes high quality instructional materials, building a vision around what we want literacy instruction to look like at the secondary level and what's going to have the greatest impact on our student growth. In full transparency, we could go through this whole process and do all this vision building, and then I could come back before you in April and say our resource that we currently had, it meets our needs, and we're going to renew and move on with that. Or I could come before you and say we've decided we're going to move forward with piloting new materials. So wherever we land, the really exciting part about this is that we've got this year to really do the vision building with our ELA team, so that whatever decision we make, we're all moving forward in the same direction, doing what we know and we're confident is best for our students. So this brings me to a really exciting opportunity that we have for 26-27 for this vision building phase. We have the opportunity to partner with TNTP for the school year. This will be entirely funded through that CLSD Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant that I referenced sooner, so it doesn't have any impact on our actual district budget. If you're not familiar with TNTP, that stands for the New Teacher Project, and they are a national nonprofit educational research group, and this is really what they do. They help schools and districts strengthen instruction and then help them through transitions, especially around high quality instructional materials and learning around those and the implementation of those. They are a partner with the Nebraska Department of Education. They're actively partnering with them for their literacy initiatives, and they are an approved professional learning provider for that CLSD literacy grant that I referenced earlier. And really their role throughout next year would be to serve as a thought partner for district leaders. They would provide strategic advising for us. They'd also provide that really strategic professional learning for our 612 ELA team and specialists, and really help us design that criteria that we want to use when we're actually looking at resources to select for a pilot. This is just a broad overview at this phase of what we're thinking for a general timeline for 26-27 as we think about this. We've been really intentional to map this out so that we're utilizing our district professional learning days to bring our 612 ELA teachers and related specialists together for this learning, so that we're being really mindful that we're not pulling them out of the classroom for this work. It's been intentionally designed around those days we already have in the calendar, and so that allows us to bring the team together. Essentially, our plan would be in the fall, again, really building our knowledge around the science of reading, doing that intentional vision building around what we want ELA instruction to look like in our classrooms, and investigating a short list of those high quality instructional materials that we think we might want to pilot. As we move into winter, we'll do some structured review sessions with the actual selection committee who will make that final determination about what we would pilot, and then we'll be communicating that out to our stakeholders. And like I said, potentially, I'll be back before you in April with more information about that needs assessment and what we've decided to do in the following school year as far as a pilot or resource adoption. So this will be, it's an information item, and then I'll be back before you for action later on this evening. And I'll be back to request approval for the use of up to $124,000 in Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant funds to partner with TNTP for the 26-27 school year. Again, this is funded completely through CLSD funding. It's already been approved through NDE and meets the qualifications and criteria for that. So really your approval would just be to give us the go-ahead to solidify that partnership so that we can help our ELA team through this pretty monumental transition that we will be facing in the upcoming years. And I will open this up for any questions, if you have any.
Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Thank you for presenting all of this. I know you touched a little bit on the growth that's demonstrated right now through 6 through 8. Can you talk more about that? Because I was reading up about how it's still not at a accelerated rate, kind of to bridge some of those systemic achievement gaps. Could you talk more about that? Like just that there is growth, but not quite to the level of what we expect.
That's exactly, yeah. I mean, we definitely see growth. Like when we're looking at our Ames Web, which is our benchmark data, that students are taking Ames Web growth in 6-8 3 times a year. Students are absolutely making growth. We're seeing growth. I don't mean to make it sound as if we're not. But what you touched on is exactly right. We know that we've got some fairly significant gaps, especially when we look at our data as compared like to state data on NSCAS, on our state testing. And in order to close those gaps, we're going to need to make even more growth, exactly as you alluded. Yep, so that is really what it is. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you. Item number 6.4, the 2026-2027 Student Handbook Update. Dr. Summer Stevens.
I do have a dongle. Do I put, what do I need to do? Oh, do I just undo? I'll just plug it in here. Okay. Thank you. Just so you can keep using your mouse. Okay. Okay. Man, I decided it's heck to get old. I just went to the eye doctor. I have 20/20 vision. But I can't see a dang thing, so what the heck? Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody. All right, do I need to do, yeah, thank you, good, Dalton's gonna help me. Oh, okay, well, it's kind of tiny, but we'll see what happens. Oh, maybe now I can do this, though, because I also had them in my, let's try this. They might be bigger. Okay. That's a little bigger. All right. Well, tonight, presenting to you the changes to the 26-27 student handbook. I'd like to start with the idea that the changes that are being presented in two documents. One is an initial set of the changes, and then there was an additional, I don't know, about 6 entries. That was a second document. There's really nothing substantially different in the handbook this year. When I first got here, Dr. Dexter had worked quite a bit with Justin Knight, the attorney, had made some pretty significant changes at that point. And so then every year here as we've gone, we've just made some, I would call it more minor tweaks, some adjustments. I keep finding various typos here and there, just trying to get some formatting. The biggest change this year that you will see that I would ask you to consider for tonight is around speaking with Mr. Knight. We talked through moving forward with, because we have really good access to our board policies on our website, and not run the risk of restating something maybe incorrectly by trying to wordsmith it into the handbook, but rather just pointing people back to the policy and not getting too, crafty with our word choice and trying to, I'm going to say, make it more into some different language, and then run the risk of, I'm going to say, misinterpreting the application of a policy accidentally. So what we're going to propose this year is, in quite a few instances, reducing down, having just kind of an introductory paragraph and referencing which board policy a lot of the items are, and then up in the introduction, in the welcome, it directs people directly to the page of the website where they can go to find policies. So we can definitely beef up any section that we need to if you find that that is concern at all. So page 3 is where that welcome is. It also gives us a chance to really highlight the website and try to get more people to our website to use it as a tool and a great resource. So I just have, I would say, just a couple of items that I would call out. A lot of them, again, are just some cleanups of different sorts. But definitely, if you have questions, let me know, and I will just kind of run through the pages that I think those are on. So that's the first one that I think is of significant note, is page 3 where the welcome is. Onto the second page with the supervision at dismissal. This has been probably a variety of practices, but it is part of our safety plan. So right now, if you are a parent, guardian, or educational representative who has responsibility and education rights of a child, if you are going to ask someone to pick up your child that is not you, you are supposed to have had that person in already announced to the school and have them in synergy as a contact person who could pick up your child. Sometimes that doesn't happen. We understand there's always emergencies and that type of thing, but we're going to continue to promote that those people are identified ahead of time in the system so that our secretaries, our school officials, our staff have the ability to know who should be picking up that child and not run the risk of any concern related to who says, I'm here to get Summer, and we don't know who that person is. Along with that, now with our technologies, we've been using Raptor, all of our schools have it. It just states in here that they may be asked to show an identification, because that is how that system works, is to use their driver's license or an identification card to be into the school to pick up students. So oftentimes, if you've picked up a student, you're, say, a grandmother, and you've picked up the student every day for 56 days in a row, they probably know who you are because they've asked the first time, or maybe the 5th time, or maybe it's a substitute secretary who doesn't know you. But we just wanted to call that out because it wasn't in there before. So we just wanted to make that clear so no one got frustrated, I guess, if they got asked about that. Moving on, going to page 9. Let's see. This is kind of referencing a little bit about what Mr. Fisher was talking about when we were talking about the band instruments. On page 9, we have, right now, because we're in the community eligibility provision status, we use what's called the alternative income or alternate income form for folks who are not the direct certification through Medicaid, SNAP benefits. If they don't qualify for the free reduced lunch of the old days through that, we have a form you can fill out, and we use that for asking us for help to get a free band instrument if you can't afford one on your own. We use that for kids to be able to apply for the ACE scholarship that we use for our dual enrollment credits, so that we can, so that kids that are taking the dual enrollments can qualify for that scholarshiping as we work towards increasing the number of students taking dual enrollment. The ACT retakes. Students that are seniors that want to retake the ACT, they use that alternative income form, and then they get a letter if they qualify, and they use that to gain access to the free ACT retakes and so forth. Getting your band uniform cleaned. Right now, the band boosters help with that. But sometimes they're just our expenses, especially in the secondary schools. We don't really have anything at elementary right now that requires that, but these would be like the things that are outside of the typical school day often, that they're just accessing with that form. So I just put that in here. It was a cleanup because it still kind of referenced the old days of filling out the actual free reduced lunch form. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Page 12 on absenteeism. And just so you know, Oscar did not have the updated prices for adult lunches, so I don't have that updated yet, but we will just update that once he gets that information and gets that approved. In the excessive absenteeism, page 12 of the current handbook, I'm going to propose to change that to just absenteeism and bring in all those different absenteeism policies. We did our regular meeting that we do with the county attorney. We went through the excessive absenteeism policy, which really talks about when we would start indicating to families, hey, you're starting to miss some school. What do we need to do to help? Hey, you're missing a lot more school. Sounds like we need a plan. Okay, it's really getting significant. The plan's not working. this might need to go on and we might need some other outside assistance. You know, we've tried everything, and then the county attorney gets involved. So every year we have to meet and we talk through those procedures, how that looks and sounds, our policy. So we had that meeting in June and made sure that we were following all the expectations of that revision to the law. And and that's in the policy that you're going to look at tonight, but it's also, that changes in the handbook. So obviously approving the change here, kids aren't getting this handbook yet, and when school starts, as long as everything goes according to plan, if there are any changes, I would make those changes to this, but you'd be approving that policy as well as the upcoming here in just a few minutes suspension policy, the same day that school's really beginning. So I'd make those adjustments if anything changed in the policies, so that you can know that. On page 24 of the current handbook, we currently, as you know, have a partnership with St. Francis with the Wellness Center at the high school. We made an update here. It used to say St. Francis and Walnut Middle School could be seen. They see all students from the 3 middle schools if we in fact would take them over there. They do medical and mental health supports. So we just made an update there. I also went ahead and we made a section working with Chris Vrooman. We do a lot of other health services, actually. We now work with Heartland Health Center as well. We've been a partner with them for several years now. They had a grant. They continue to have different grant resources, but we work with all of our Title I buildings and have been able to work through providing physicals for students at the Title I buildings, which does include Walnut and Barr middle schools, but the Title I elementary schools. But also they are the folks helping with our dental screenings. So the level 1 dental screenings, they're doing those. And then they're also starting to provide additional dental care through actual dental appointments that they come into the schools and help provide. So that's part of the work they're already doing, and they're helping us with our dental, like the toothbrushes when the kids get those. This year we're struggling a little bit because apparently it's getting more expensive and that type of thing, but those are really great services they have. They also have mental health supports as well, and they now have a psychiatrist, so they can have medication checks and different things too that they're bringing online. So we've been a partner with them, but they do come into our schools as well. And then also just a lot of community mental health providers now come into our school system, and we established a memorandum of understanding process last year where they actually have to present their liability insurance, and they follow a memorandum of understanding process with us of what we expect when they're in our facilities, and that they agree to those conditions, if you will. And parents know that it's still like taking them out to an appointment, but it really saves on time, and it ensures instead of missing half a day or the whole day, that a student could just come from class, have their 40, 50-minute appointment potentially, and go back to class. And so it's our attempt to continue to reduce absenteeism, but get students the help and care that they need. And also encourage when we know that some students really need that kind of support. I'm going to say it's kind of an in to say, we already have some people who come here. And that seems to be a way that some families, it opens the door for them a little bit easier. So we're still working through that a little bit, but I put that section in, it was not there before. You will note we're dropping face coverings, the section, not that we're gonna drop face coverings, because you can still wear them, there's still a policy about it, but we just felt like we could take it out for now, out of the handbook. Page 58, we've had 2 sections kind of running concurrently for a while in the handbook. We have had a section with all the technology policies, like the acceptable use and appropriate use and how we monitor. We had a whole big section. And then we had a technology, like technology one-to-one handbook at the end of the handbook. So Corey Gearhart and I talked about how about, because it had a lot of the same stuff, we just end having the whole policies about technology in the front part, and we reference them in the back part and clean that part up, because that's really more of the, I'm gonna say, student use, student-friendly portion. So that's what we did. So we're gonna kind of try to combine those 2 sections. We did make some adjustments because Google email. They do have a Google email, but we use a lot of the Google tools, so we try to reference that and bring that a little bit more forward. And I will also say, obviously if you're alive today, you have seen, the news or the internet or wherever, and a lot of debate right now about like who's using technology in schools. And we just wanted to make clear, like, it is important to us in Grand Island Public Schools to use technology for appropriate uses, to make meaning, to use them to create, to be productive, to help kids move forward and be college and career ready, and be able to be ready for what's next and build durable skills that are important and use them effectively. So we tried to kind of call that out because I want that to be the focus. Not that we have the devices, but rather that we intend to continue to always do better, but that we're making sure we're using them for great purposes, because there is a lot of great resources and a lot of great stuff out there for kids and adults to use in the world that we live in today. And so we wanted to call that out. We also have what we call tiered filtering that we do use as part of kind of a consequence system for when students maybe lack the skills, I'm going to just say executive functioning tools to be able to manage and regulate themselves through the use of their devices. And so we did not have that spelled out before, but we have added that we have a tiered filtered system. Parents are always involved in that process so that they know if we are going to do any restricting down from I'm going to say the least restrictive use of the device, which is using it with the filter just as it comes from school, all the way down to you get to only use this one program at this time or nothing at all. And you're using paper and pencil only at a given time. So we did make that adjustment. And the very last thing I wanted to call out was in relation to we approved this a couple months ago, was related to parents having the ability to opt in to request information about their student checking books out of the library. In the media centers. And so we have a section that we'll be adding, which does talk about the process that a parent would use to gain access to opt in to receiving an email message about a book or the materials that their children have checked out of the media centers. And so that is that section, and that is on the additional, the second document, which was the additional changes. And it's going to go on page 32. After the parental access to educational practices, it'll follow that section. So as soon as we get all these updates typed in, reduced down, we'll update the table of contents. So pages will shift around, but the handbook should be a bit shorter and hopefully just as easy to access for everybody. But I would take questions or if anyone has any concerns, and we will address what we need to.
Mr. Garcia Mendez.
No concerns, but a question. I think you were running through like the list of what Title I schools like offer in terms of like the health
Sure.
access. If a student were not to attend a Title I school, are like those services available to them? Like, is there any linkage like within other schools who are not Title I with some of those schools? Because it's very black and white, but we know that our world is very gray, right?
Yes. So I guess the answer I would give you today would be at every school that Grand Island Public Schools has, we have either a social worker, a school counselor, or both. And so through that process, I would say we would be identifying any student who is struggling through, again, whatever their financial situation, or it could be something that's not financial, but it could be just due to some other, I'm going to say under-resourced situation, that they would work to. So these are our partners typically, right? So the Heartland Health Center, Third City Clinic, and St. Francis typically are the ones. We also send a lot of students to regional with our mental health concerns. But any of those facilities, those folks, kind of boots on the ground, student support services type folks would be working with their families to get them directed to whomever they need to. So again, it would either be being seen in school or helping them get to a service outside of school. Helping get linked up, we link up a lot with the Central District Health Department to get some of their emergency funds or to get with their navigators to work on Medicaid. We do a lot of Medicaid application filling out and things like that. Yep.
Dr. Mann.
Maybe a question, not about the content that you shared, but the process. After you get the handbook done, and you spend a lot of time preparing, and obviously, what happens? How do we know that the kids get the handbook?
Well, to be honest, we really don't. So right now, people acknowledge the handbook when they do the online registration, which happens before the handbook changes are made. So this year, we've talked about actually re-asking them to acknowledge the new handbook in the fall, so that it is reflecting the changes. So parents actually going back in, we have the capacity now in our student information system to run what's called a form and have that go back through. Now, depending on the middle school, the high school, they have different components that they definitely direct kids to. Athletic department directs kids to components of the handbook that are related to, since they made a little bit of those changes for participation, like you have to pass so many classes now, and like you can't miss things, and some of those pieces, counselors and social workers definitely talk to kids about the components in the book. But that's one of the things that I would like to continue to do better, is direct people better to the handbook, especially after we've made the updates. Because we tell them it's updated in some communications, but they've signed their agreement based on the old book. So that was our goal this year, was to reintroduce, these changes have happened. And this is a little bit meaty, so without because it wouldn't look like this for them, but to be able to at least either show them one that even had highlights on it. It could be something that is the handbook, and a highlighted version could be an example that's a PDF or something. But put something in a newsletter that says, hey, these changes have happened. Now, we put out after all, because so much of it is policy, and it's changes to the policy that you all have made over the course of 12 months. So we share that out after every board meeting if a policy has been adopted, right? It goes out in a family newsletter that goes to everybody, but we don't want to make the assumption that they have read it and that they know the policy and how it's going to apply, because today something didn't happen with their child, but in 7 months it may have, and it might have been related to that policy that was 7 months ago, and they're not thinking about how now, that policy is different than what the handbook said. So we can always do better, and I would expect that we'd want to do that. So if you have ideas about some additional ways to share that out, would definitely take your input. Kids do go over dress code. They go over, what are the rules, those type of things that end up being things leading to discipline, dress code, some of those violations, being present. Social workers, counselors obviously continue to work on the absenteeism components. But definitely we can do better to make sure people reference it, because otherwise then it's just, again, just like when we talked about school improvement, not, Mr. Fisher's talked about that, not being just a book on the shelf. We don't want this to just be a pamphlet that's on the, in the hamper, in the trash can, if you will.
All right.
So I think, and is it on for action also tonight? Did we put it on? Okay, so it will be coming to you later. But if you have any other concerns or questions, let me know.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm staying here, I think.
6.5, Summer Programs Overview. Dr. Stevens.
Okay, hopefully. Okay. Sorry, gotta get this started up here. Okay, this is way more fun, this one. So, okay. All right, so summer programming. The district's been very fortunate in the era of the ESSER funds. There was a lot going on, and I think the district has done a pretty phenomenal job continuing to hang on as much of that programming as possible. and try to continue to work through what is available, what's possible, finding what funding sources can continue to bring kids in and provide great opportunities for our youngest to our oldest learners in our system throughout the summer months. And so tonight I just wanted to share with you kind of an update of what's occurred so far. Some of the things I won't have as much information on, but we're going to do our best to enlighten you, and you can ask questions. And I'll talk a little bit about the summer feedings, just a touch, and Oscar definitely has some more on that as well. So I'm just going to run through some of the programs that we have had and give some shout outs and some thanks. So Summer Strong is our Title I elementary school program. This is for our students who have finished kindergarten through 4th grade. So they're going into 1st through 5th grade. And this is located, last year we held it over at Star because we were having some work done at West Lawn. So we had, in the morning, we had Summer Strong Summer School, and then the afternoon over there we had Power Camp. It was a pretty solid situation, but Dr. Minkin had some things that they had going on, and like some things in the gym that they wanted to use, and just a lot of the stuff is over there that they wanted to access. And so, and it's a great space to have it. So we moved back over to West Lawn, and Chandra Myers and Dr. Minkin are the leads on that. During the summer, there were 243 students who did attend, average about 190 over the course of 4 weeks time. They work on academic enrichment opportunities designed to prevent summer learning loss and to close achievement gaps. Working on math fluency, problem solving, foundational reading skills, and structured immersive reading. They also work on STEAM, which is your science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics projects, and collaborative team building. Working on improving communication and cooperation. Again, great examples of the profile of a learner stuff that we heard earlier. So I think we're gonna find lots of great ways to connect that and really elevate that that's what we're doing. They also partnered with Subway, the Fightin' Cranes. They read around the bases. That kind of got presented to us as an opportunity, and the kids got free tickets and meals at the game, so that was interesting. And they did an at-home reading program with kids self-selecting their books. They have, here in July, the family pool party, and they had 49 staff, including the lunch and nursing staff. And I just tried to throw this on to give you a context. They were an open site, what we call it, for lunch, breakfast and lunch. In years past, summer school has been what we call a closed site for lunch and breakfast, which meant only kids that went to that program could eat there. This year, any student could eat there for breakfast or lunch with our summer meal program. So for example, I don't know if they did it the entire time, but outside of our summer programs, the Grand Island Police Department puts on the SRO camps for kids that have been in 5th grade. They had like 200 some kids this year. They hosted it at Newell, and they walked to West Lawn a couple days each camp to eat lunch on some of the hottest days. They were a little sweaty. It's a mile, so they got their workouts. But that was the nice part about having it as an open site, is that anyone could go there. So just wanted to share that, and just a couple of pictures of some of the great things that they were doing to share out there. Power Camp actually is 2nd through 5th grade, and again, for kids in the Title I schools. And they had about 250 students, again, give or take on any given day. And that takes place in the afternoon of the 4-week session of summer programs in June. And they had some thematic staycation day experiences connected to community organizations and presenters. They had Imagination City, Nancy Fairbanks, Omaha Street Percussion, Nebraska 4-H was there, Kearney Children's Museum, Des Moines Adams came, and there were many others. They did hands-on STEAM experiences, enrichment activities. They had 12 certified staff. They had 12 paraprofessional type positions, 2 secretaries, and they had 2 leads. And those 2 leads were Eric Streck and Tamisha Osgood. And it was held at Star, and they were an open lunch site. this year. Last year, they were an open lunch site as well. And according to Oscar from Nutrition Services, they actually had more students and young students that might not even be students yet for Grand Island, like 2-year-olds maybe even middle school, high school students. They had more students come to STAR this year for lunch that weren't in Power Camp to eat than that were. So that was, again, kind of interesting, because sometimes students don't go to summer school for Title I, but they get picked up all around town and they come still to Power Camp. But they may have eaten at a couple of our other sites that had meals, so that was good. But a couple other pictures there for you from Power Camp. We also have a great opportunity with our special education program for extended school year. We run 2 sites. We run a site at Shoemaker and then also at Senior High. We had 30 elementary and 22 secondary students, and they worked on individual goals and maintaining critical skills, specifically, especially at the secondary, being self-advocates, sequencing, reading, and math. They did some outings to the library, to Stewart Museum. They checked off their Nebraska passports. If you guys don't do that program, you should. It's great fun to do, to be able to go check out different places in town. We always have great places here in town or surrounding areas. They had 40 staff members and 2 coordinators, and Morgan Wheeler and Katie Wilkinson were the coordinators for that program. And on the kind of end programming there, they had some water fun. And it's just always great to see. Again, for many kids, they may not have ever done some of those things, and that's true of any of our kids in any of our programs, so we love that. Dodge Elementary went ahead, and they were able to have a summer experience as well. Alicia Rice was the coordinator. She has been, and she continued to do it this year. They serve students in K-3. They had 40 students this year. They worked a lot on literacy and math, and then they also did a lot with art. And she just mentioned them really thriving in their creativity, and she loves seeing that, and the staff loves seeing that with kids. They did Minute to Win It games on the last day. They did a nature walk, and they had a lot of active play. They had 4 teachers, and then, like I said, she was the coordinator, and they had an open breakfast and a lunch site there. We also housed, we had a couple social workers, plus our FIT coordinator housed out of there, and our interpreter over the summer. They're still there this month of July as well, but it was really good. We got a lot of kids to be able to come to Dodge to also eat meals from our FIT program. So that was great as well. The Elevate Summer School, I should have Dr. Levos come and talk about it, but Whitney Flower and Dr. Levos are the leads for this. And if you would like to, would you like to talk about it since you're here? I'll let her talk about it.
So we had 117 students in kindergarten through 12th grade who attend Elevate Summer School. They are students who are within our EL program or immigrant qualified because of how we fund it. We had 25 staff members. We had 10 teachers, 10 bilingual paraeducators, and then our support staff. So we had immigrant liaisons and others there as well. The theme this year, and Whitney Flower takes all the credit for the creativity around all of this, but the theme was Leaders Around the World, One Team, Many Cultures. We continued with starting the day with community circles where students were able to practice their English language with each other and got up on the microphone and spoke to each other, which was always fun. And then we also continued the learner and leader buddy time where we paired our elementary students with our secondary students. So they had a match for the 4 weeks of summer school, and each day they had something different they were working on. Those themes were around teamwork, respect, perseverance, and leadership in action. We had a very powerful panel with community members that shared their immigrant stories. We had the owner of GI Deli Boards that came in and talked to kids too, as well, just again, so students see themselves and others in the community who have been successful. They did state fair projects, so that looked different at elementary, middle, and high school, but they did one together, which is that picture there. All of those individual pieces are butterflies. So she showed a story about butterfly migration and how everyone has their own migration story. And so students created their own butterflies, so they're super creative butterflies, and then they wrote on them something about their family or their story. They added weekly library checkout during their win time this year. Again, we have many newcomer students who this is their first, go at school, and so just learning some of those processes within school as well. So they really appreciated that. And then I had our 9-12 newcomer math teacher, because we did focus on math and literacy and language. She did a pre and post test. The beginning of the 4 weeks of summer school, only 22% of her students were the test that she gave, 22% showed proficiency, right? Their average score is 22%. By the end of summer school, they were at a average of 74%, or their highest class being at 85%. So makes a difference. Elevate was also an open breakfast site. They did not serve lunch there, but we did because of the boundaries. But we did have students be able to go to Star and other locations for open lunch.
Thank you. That was way better. That was way more authentic. Awesome. West Lawn also, through a grant that they have, that they've had kind of running concurrently. If you remember a couple years ago, we had a grant from Beyond School Bells, and they've continued to be able to also continue to have some grant funding. It was called a leverage grant, a catalyst grant. And they've just, as they have had their different grants in place, be able to kind of have resources and supports and funding to bring kids in. So during a couple of weeks during the month of June, they had a summer club at West Lawn in the afternoons. So some of those were kids not going over to Power Camp. They had 28 students, and they had kind of thematic things going on over the course of the 2 weeks. They had 6 staff members. And again, Chandra was a lead on that, and Gladys Cruz, who is their family engagement liaison, was a key part of that as well. They did a lot of STEAM activities and community guests and scavenger hunts. So there's just some pictures. It's really hard. You can zoom in on it on your own devices, but it looks like they're doing some comics and drawing, and they're pretty good. So again, so it's pretty fun to see the elementary kids doing that work. On to the high school, credit recovery at the high school. It kind of continues to morph and grow and shift. Last school year, they had started a couple live classes in math and that in algebra, geometry. And so continuing kind of in that vein, this year, they were able to have some math instruction, language arts instruction, and some social studies instruction. And as we get better at that was referenced when they were presenting on the profile of a learner, but we have our goal, right, to have 80% of our kids, meeting standards. That's what, when we're able to start articulating what were those standards that we wanted kids to meet, and what do we want them to know and be able to do, and do we know if they know those things or not, they were able to start kind of piecing out what were those things that kids didn't know. Not specifically that they had an F in a grade, but what were those actual standards and skills? And so if I brought you in, you showed me you know these things, but you don't know these things. So how do we get you to know these things? And then become able to pass. And so those live classes is one way. They can do that in Momentum too, but again, we're just not quite there yet collectively with the way that we measure everything at the secondary level. But they did those live classes and worked kids through in a pretty personalized way. And then, of course, our Momentum classes as well. They had 10 teachers. We had 20 summer graduates this year, so that's really great. And again, not everyone necessarily was through the summer programming like this, but we're pretty happy with it. I've listed out the number of credits and how they were earned across 9th through the 12X kids. But so students earned 1,889 credits during the month of June. So remembering a class is 5 credits typically, you can see kind of how kids did with that. And we did have they kind of took a launch to doing an AP seminar preview. We have a course now in 10th grade that is called AP Seminar. And they wanted to get kids, it's really for many students, it's their first time taking something advanced placement. And so we had 8 students who took that kind of kind of a boot camp situation to get prepared about what does that mean to do summer homework, because for many of them that will be the first time they do it, and insight into what's going to be asked of them. And again, it was an open site for breakfast only, and had different people taking advantage of that. Also at the high school, last year, if you recall, in July, we had a couple days, we had an opportunity for some ninth grade kids they wanted to get back to having like a jump start opportunity for ninth graders, and so they did last year, and it was a little bit shorter situation, but bringing kids in. This year they proposed to do the last week of June, and so they had about 130 students coming into Grand Island Senior High. They did icebreakers, they did transition to high school activities, they took tours around the building, they got a lot of advice. I'm sure they got a lot of advice. They worked in their islands, they learned about lunch and the need to know things, so give them a leg up a little bit so it feels a little bit more comfortable the first day you go. They worked on some strengths finders materials. They did an obstacle course with the reserve. The hooligans had a pep rally. They did a scavenger hunt. They had snow cones. There were 9 staff members who worked with that kind of, again, under Miss Haley Kepi was the lead this year for summer school and the lead over that, but also Holly Boschlager was kind of a lead teacher for the group with some of the ninth grade counselors and some other teachers. So a couple pieces there for you. A couple other summer programming pieces. Vocational rehabilitation has had a work-based learning grant for quite a long time, actually I think since 2017. And so we've kind of continued to morph and grow it. I would tell you that this year they made some adjustments and changes, and it was much more competitive to get this grant. And I think we were one of the few schools that did get the grant this year. And so we'll have to just stay on our game and keep making adjustments and improvements so that we're able to continue to get this. We have stayed at about the 15 student range of what we like to hire. So what happens is we can get up to about a certain amount. The grant award is for a certain amount, but the goal is to have students who are in high school, students who have IEPs, who will be working with vocational rehabilitation kind of on their transition goals, to work through looking at what their strengths and interests and skill sets are, and going out there and working through the summer, at least through June, having a job coach who can help them, so from school, but also vocational rehabilitation, working again on all those durable job skills, presentation of self, interviewing, those things, but also just on the job, day-to-day work, so that they can build some endurance and they just work through, challenges and persevere. We actually we move them along as the district moved from paper time sheets, which Virgil was super glad about. We transition them at the same time to the TCP system. So that's how it's going to be. That's what they're working with in jobs. And we also worked through, some of them didn't have phones, and some of them didn't have, we weren't sure we wanted them to take a computer to some job site that was, somewhere that maybe didn't even have internet. But we've grown a lot over the last 3 years in the program. So 13 student interns this year. So we were down, we had 15 as our goal. We had 13, ended with 12. We always like to have 5 worksite skills trainers. We had 4 this year, and then we had one person who kind of starts out the work and starts helping us get the employers and work on getting the kids actually hired and getting all of the paperwork done. And kudos to Dr. Kohler and her folks, because they onboard just like an employee does and have to do all the work and get their bank accounts and all the paperwork, because they're employees of the school district while they do this work. And so then she kind of offboards, and the other 2 coordinator people help support the skills trainers, the coaches, and the students, and they go out on the sites and just kind of work through any troubles, struggles, whatever, with parents and our employers, and help through that. So you can see there the employers, and you can see if they were a new employer. And then we also listed if they hired students. So we had a number of students who at the end of their time, they can work 100 hours is what the grant's for. And we had a number of students this year, more so than any year I've only been here three summers, but in the 3 summers I've been here, this is the most yet, that got hired on to continue working in the summer. And some of these kids actually have ambitions, especially the ones with the Hall County parks. They see some potential to actually work for Hall County when they finish school with Grand Island. So, and again, it'll be a good wage position for them and with good benefits, and they really enjoyed being out and about. So really happy with that program. And Lori Watts and Karma Lewandowski this year were in the positions that were on in June, and Jessica Tinkerang, who is a school psychologist, was in the front end helping. Then we also put on a robotics camp with Title IV funds this year. We had art camp last year, if you remember. We did not have as great a turnout, so we kind of doubled up on robotics camp this year. And Suzanne and Darwin Bure, who work at the high school, put that on for us. And we had some high school student workers and helping us out. But we had 13 second through fourth graders and 18 fifth through seventh graders in the end who fully attended. With some ESSER dollars, we had actually got some Lego robotics kits, and they used those pretty extensively and worked with some makerspace activities and did some create your own. You might have seen them. They were on the news. The news was out, and they did highlight them on the news. They were also in the newspaper, so that was fun, and that was really enjoyable. That was also the last week of June. We've had a lot of sports camps. We've had a lot of weightlifting training happening for middle schoolers, for high schoolers. We have Jumpstart Kindergarten. We've typically had a few. We have very many Jumpstart Kindergartens happening here starting, I think, the week of the 20th. There are going to be, I think that's when Howard's is, and then just a number of them are going to be happening with, some are more days than others, but just many more this year happening for Jumpstart Kindergarten, which is exciting. And then Jumpstart 6 typically has been all three middle schools. Bar is not going to have theirs in the traditional fashion because of their HVAC project happening, but they will be communicating with families and how that's going to look for their kids. But that's coming up here also at the end of the month. And in terms of meals, we also had meals. So Dodge had open breakfast and lunch. Howard, because they were having some work done there, they did not have a summer program, and worked with Mr. Petch, and we had a lunch program there, and they actually had a really good turnout there. Shoemaker did have open breakfast and lunch also over there, but I could report to you at this moment, according to Oscar, we are actually up 280 meals served from last year's from the month of June, which is excellent, because I know there were a couple of days where he was a little nervous or worried what that was going to look like. So that is really good news, and he has some good takeaways and some things. But I asked if he, would want to present at some point, and I think he probably will. But anyway, so if you have any questions, I appreciate you taking the time, because this is the fun stuff, and I know it's the stuff you all like to say. I do have thank yous for nutrition services, because they do great work, obviously. Buildings and grounds, the custodians, just staff in general, federal programs, L4L stuff helps a lot with things, student program staff. Holiday Express does a lot of driving around, the print shop, the warehouse staff hauls a lot of stuff around, and just our awesome community for being partners. Because that is what it's all about. And hopefully we can always have, I went to an after school conference once, and I left feeling bad, because it was kind of like, do all these awesome things in the after school and in the summer. And I was like, but school can be like that too. So continuing for us to use our partners as much as we can during school as well. So if you have any questions or you need anything else, let me know.
All right, thank you very much. Item number 6.6, Nebraska Stat 79-3405, Property Tax Authority Resolution.
Well, before we get into the seriousness of Property Tax Request Authority, I thought I'd just remind you, there's a famous movie line, you had me at hello, summer had me at snow cone. Just saying, I was all in on the summer program. So I don't know who's driving, but if you'd be so kind. trying to go to the attachment that talks about the property tax request historical information. So there you go. So I want to just start off here because the data now having 4 years of certified values kind of starts to tell a story about Grand Island Public Schools. And so you can see that I've taken a section B there, from the certified information that we get from the Nebraska Department of Ed. And it's really talking about the percentage that we can go up just because that's what the law says when they passed it and introduced this. This really ends up being a revenue cap. So you can see the data there, and what that trend of data tells you, the total base, oops, my screen just went blank. Okay. So you can see the total base growth rate percent started in 23-24 at 4.6%, and now we're down to 3%. So what that's telling you is that the for whatever reason, maybe political environment, whatever, the drivers of poverty and LEP are going down in Grand Island. So the number of students that we're having in those categories is decreasing, so it's flatlining. So they're not giving us any additional spending authority because we don't have more students in those areas. We actually have fewer. So that's just kind of one piece of data that tells you what's going on. Then kind of to the far right, the second to the last column there, it's labeled A minus F. So the certified amount. So in essence, what happens is there's a complicated formula. The state says you can only have so much revenue authority, property tax revenue authority. And if you want additional money, then the board, by supermajority, has to vote, and we can do by statute up to 5% extra. And so the first year we did that, not knowing what was going to come, so we just did it out of a theory of maximization. We're going to maximize the resources for the district, but only use what we need. And so that first year, that's exactly what we did. We did the additional 5%, but we did not use any of it. In fact, we banked $238,000. You can see that dollar amount there. So then the story becomes, oh, well, the next year we took all 5%, but we ended up using $1.3 million. The following year, this current school year, we did the same thing, and we used $2.1 million. But if you kind of look at the levy, it's a cap on the general fund, and it's a cap on the special building fund. If you remember what we did with the special building fund, we maxed it out to the 14 cents because we're trying to accomplish very real facility goals. Mr. Fisher spent a good amount of time in the school year this year talking and engaging with the community about our needs. They're very real needs. We're going to be able to do a great building project for Gates because we did that. We would not have been able to do that to the extent that we did if we hadn't asked for this additional authority. We didn't use it all, but we did use $2.1 million. So the interesting thing is if you look at column A, kind of in the middle, certified dollar amount, kind of goes along 45 million, 45 million 3, 46 million 5. Lo and behold, look at the number we have there for next school year, $66 million, $20 million increase. Well, why am I standing here asking you for additional authority? Because that's an anomaly. The number is going to go right back down next year. And if you want, I have a spreadsheet, and we can go through every single data point, and I can explain it to you but what I'll tell you is, in essence, what happens is we have some kind of interesting swings in our state aid. If you remember, for the current school year, we had a $7 million increase. $3 million of that ended up being an error by the state because of the poverty calculation. We get to pay that back next year. So this next school year, we have a $12 million decrease in state aid. So those two pieces combined with the formula, the way it's laid out in statute, creates basically a just short of $19 million swing. The rest of it's actual real growth that we should be entitled to, kind of thing. Next year, the numbers are going to swing right back, and we're going to be back into like a $45-46 million authority kind of thing. So that's what's going on. I'd be happy to, there's other attachments to the agenda item. It is just information this month. Give you some time to look at it, think about it, ask questions, and then next month we have an actual resolution. Once again, it is a revenue cap. It's a limit on how much we can actually levy property tax authority, and it's only going to be in the amount that we use and not grab for every penny that we can be entitled to. For one thing, I think we might have a few upset constituents if we actually ask for $74 million in taxes when we're like at $43 million. We might get a few upset people. So the numbers are just wild because of those weird things going on with state aid. So that's what I know. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Albers.
Did that come on? Thank you for recording the FNF meeting. I watched the entire thing. It was riveting.
As always.
As always. But I'm really glad you're presenting tonight because I did have a couple questions. So, our basic growth for poverty has decreased, but as you mentioned, that's also, and Oscar was talking about this too, it's because of the reduction in SNAP benefits and the reduction in Medicare benefits, and so fewer students are being identified, so then I think it's a perceived decrease in the number of students living in poverty, but in fact, I would argue that that's not really true. And then Oscar also discussed about what is the free lunch program, CEP. I always get that wrong. Yeah. So, and that he had, and this is for other people that were not in the FNF meeting, but, Oscar was talking about that there were some districts that were going to try to apply for extra years of the CEP, but because we have fewer students that are identified, that are Medicare and SNAP benefit eligible, then we're not going to be able to qualify for an additional 2 years of the CEP. So it's quite disappointing for a lot of our students that they're not going to be getting the benefits of the free lunch. So I just thought that was kind of an important component to pull out of all of this, because it's really what I took away from FNF. It was one of the most impactful things that I think was discussed in that meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. The only thing I can say is you're certainly correct in the federal government's, I guess, current stance on what's required and how the system works is contracting the number of people that get identified for those benefits. It doesn't change the reality of what they're living in, kind of thing. So, yep. So, yeah, any other questions, I guess? I'll be back next month for the resolution to be considered. Thank you.
All right, thank you. On to item 6.7.1, under policy, attendance officer, Mr. Matt Fisher.
All right, the meeting keeps getting more and more exciting. We got to talk about good stuff with kids, and we got to talk about taxes, and now we get to talk about policy. So, and really the policies that we get to talk about this month, for the most part, at least all the ones that are in the information side of things, are policies that we're bringing forward because of legislative changes. And once the legislature is done, then the school attorneys go to work and they put in place policies that they send to us that indicate what changes we need to make in our policies to align with the legislative changes. So that's what these policies that we're going to go through here in information are. And we will start out with policy 3315, which deals with the attendance officer. And again, this is a policy that basically we have multiple attendance policies that we're going to touch on here tonight. And this one deals with the attendance officer and really what that does. If you look at the changes that are made in this policy, it really shifts responsibility for that attendance officer role to the building principals, and we had kind of really leaned on our social workers in this area in the past, and we've been trying to shift that responsibility because attendance is one of our strategic plan goals to really make that a broader area of, I guess, support for attendance. And so in effect, we're saying the principal is going to be the one in charge, and the principal is going to make decisions about where are the best ways to do investigations and so on, instead of spelling it out and making it necessarily tied to the social workers. So, questions on that one? All right. Moving on.
Dr. Mann.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm assuming that the excessive absenteeism number is based on the number of school days in the school calendar? It's not a semester.
It's the excessive absentee, and we actually will get to excessive absenteeism. That's another one of the ones that we get to talk about, the actual policy around that one. It's based on the number of school days. Now, there is a piece in there that does look at semesters, and really, Dr. Stevens had talked earlier about the meeting that she had with the county attorneys, and that's where those numbers really come into play, is when is a student considered to be excessively absent, and when does that situation become something that the county attorney could potentially be involved with. And there are some changes in that policy as well, so we'll touch on it a little bit more there. Other questions on that first attendance officer one? If not, then we'll shift gears a little bit and talk about purchasing authority. And this one, there's a section that has been added here that deals with purchasing limits or requirements. Again, there are guidelines that are fairly specific about when board approval is needed. And what this section 4 does is really provides, and the legislature put this in place, that provides that in emergency situations, that there is an ability for basically the school to act, the district to act without going through a formal board process. And so that's what basically this section 4 says, is that, by gaining prior approval from the board president, the superintendent could go ahead and act in these emergency situations. Questions around that? All right. Mail and delivery services. This one's kind of an interesting one because this is where it shows up. Basically, the legislature in this last session said that if you have a group that represents a professional organization that represents certified employees, and you gave them access to certain things, then if there's another representative group for that same group of employees, you'd have to grant them the same access. And one of those things deals with physical and electronic mailboxes. And so actually that's where this policy comes into play, is that basically the attorney felt like we should add a statement that would say that if we grant one that access to those mailboxes, we were going to grant any other professionals that met the qualifications that same access. Questions around that one? Okay. Enrollment option. Legislature, this was kind of a big topic to start the legislative session. It started out initially, there was a proposal that basically said you were going to, if you accepted option students, you had to accept all option students, and they really weren't going to have much of any say. Ultimately, that was, I guess, pared down to the point where basically if you have a student you've accepted as an option student, then you would be obligated to accept siblings of that student. And that's really where this change comes into play. There's a couple different places the wording is added in here, some wording changes that the attorney also recommended that were made in this. But the real meat of this is down here when we get into section C, which was added, which in effect says that if you've accepted one child and they have a sibling, then you would be required to accept the sibling as an option student as well, regardless of your ability to serve. So, you know, regardless of what your capacity numbers are, regardless of what the, you know, the needs, if there are special needs for that sibling, you know, whether you have the, you know, employees that you would need to serve those needs or not, you are still required to accept that student. So that's basically what Section C does, and then Section D, most of it's crossed out because it basically dealt with that our priority typically would have been that sibling. Well, now it's not a priority, now it is you will take. Questions around that?
Ms. Elbers.
Just more of a statement or a clarification on that. I think for all of us, we would think that it would be the right thing to take the sibling because it's easier for the family and they'd be going to the same school. Some of that is common sense. The big issue that we talked a lot about at NASB on the Ledge Committee was that this really is, it's impactful to districts like GIPS, certainly, but also to smaller districts. It's more impactful because if the sibling happens to have very dire disabilities, in some instances, if they don't have the capabilities of serving that student or they don't have the special ed staff to do that, it can be almost bankrupting to some of those smaller districts and some of those smaller schools. So it was a real concern and just really discussed a lot. But if you look at it as a larger district, it doesn't seem quite like that big of a deal. But when you really dig down to how it impacts other districts within the state, you understand kind of the nuances of it.
Okay. All right. Along those same lines, we'll talk about admission. And I guess the first proposed change here, this one didn't come from the attorney. This was something that I thought up myself here. This entrance age does not seem really to apply to, it obviously applies to part of this policy, but this policy is a lot broader than the entrance age. So I felt like renaming it admission and controlled, and continued enrollment was a better name for it. So I am proposing that we change that name. Then there's a few minor things up at the top, but then we get down to the bottom of this, and this is actually the language that the attorney has added, recommending that we adopt, and it really deals with restrictions on transfers and disenrollment during certain investigations. In effect, the legislature said that if a family is under investigation, that you should restrict their ability to unenroll and go elsewhere. So that's really what this statement is all about. Questions on that? All right, then moving on to excessive absenteeism. And this is the other policy that again was referenced in that earlier policy on the attendance officer. And the legislative change basically comes into play in this statement here. Absences due to illness, including physical or mental illness, that make attendance impossible or impracticable, and that are documented by a credentialed health professional shall not be the basis for referral to the county attorney. In cases of chronic illness, such documentation will be reviewed each semester. So what the legislature in effect said is that if you have documentation of illness from a credentialed healthcare provider, that those absences would not count for referral to the county attorney. So a student who misses 30 days and has those 30 days documented would not be referred to the county attorney, whereas normally, we would have had county attorney involvement well before the 30 days. So, in effect, that's what, and again, this was a legislative compromise because the initial bill actually said that there would be no absence that would count. If a parent said that the child was excused, then their child was excused. And there would be no reporting to the county attorney of anything that the parents reported as excused. Ultimately, that got changed, and we got this. And so one of the things that we've, said that we really want to make sure that we do, because we get notes that we know that people aren't necessarily being seen. So we really want to work with our healthcare providers to make sure that they're well aware of how this works. And so I know that's one of the things that Dr. Stevens has talked to about is really trying to reach out to those healthcare providers and make sure that they understand this. And so again, that's the legislative piece that goes into effect right there. The other language, deals with some other parts of that. The school will implement investigations within its purview throughout the process and attempts to overcome barriers identified through the process. So again, one of the other expectations of the legislature is that we are doing everything in our power to help students overcome their attendance situation. Well, obviously attendance is one of our goals, so yes, we are definitely going to be doing everything that we can to help make sure that students are regular in their attendance. And I think we put a lot of things in place as we started putting emphasis on attendance this past year. I think we have really worked with schools to identify, well, what are things that we could do to help improve student attendance? And so I think that's something that we're going to continue to focus on. So I think if you go back up to this policy or this paragraph that has the red in it here, students who accumulate 10 absences in a semester which are not excused shall be deemed as having excessive absences. I think that goes to your question, Dr. Mann. It's 20, basically it's a 20 absence, and it really doesn't, doesn't necessarily change, our number of school days is very similar from year to year. And so it's almost always as 20 as a year is what we're looking at, but we do look at it on a per semester basis, and once it gets to 10, we're considering them to have had excessive absences for that semester. So other questions about this? All right. So now let's talk about part-time enrollment. This was another area that the legislature decided that we needed to make some adjustments. Really won't amount to much of anything for us, but in effect, the legislature said that students who are members of our district should have opportunities to participate in extracurricular activities, which has happened and we have allowed. When we get down here, there were some kind of specific guidelines that were put forward. Basically, part-time students participating in extracurricular activities shall meet the following enrollment requirements. If it's an NSAA activity, they have to be enrolled in at least 5 credit hours to be eligible by the NSAA. Then this part B, basically if it's a state organization and they have guidelines about what the enrollment is, then they would need to meet those guidelines. And then the C for activities not governed by the NSA or other national or state organization, the student must enroll in at least 5 credit hours or the equivalent for middle school students. So in effect, basically you're going to have to be enrolled in a class to be eligible for those activities, is really what it boils down to. And that's really no different than what we've been doing. So the language is in there, really doesn't change the operational process.
Ms. Albers.
So they had a student that wanted to join FFA, and FFA requires that they're full-time students. And so that's one of the reasons that they brought this. So FFA is it's a national organization. They require that the student's full-time at the affiliated school. And so they were trying to get that changed, but it had an overarching requirement from the national organization. So that's why we have to include in this that it's whatever the affiliated organization requires. So what they were able to pass didn't help the student that wanted to get into FFA, because they were a homeschooled student that would then want to take the 5 credit hours, but it wouldn't require, I think it was, and FBLA was another one, and there were just a couple of those that, students wanted to join, but they were not full-time students. So that's kind of the background on that one.
Okay. Then we get to deal with student suspension, expulsion, and mandatory reassignment. And Dr. Stevens had referenced this one also. This would be something that would show up in the student handbook. And again, this was one of those, basically the legislative intent was to give schools some means of suspending students in pre-K through 2nd grade above what was there currently. And really the only reason that was there currently is if they brought a weapon to school. And so what the legislature added is they added some language around violent behavior that had the potential to harm other students or staff members. So they added that in, but along with that, they also added some fairly extensive guidelines as far as what school personnel had to do anytime there was a suspension, regardless of the age of student or the type of suspension. So in each of these different areas where it talks about the different types of suspension, that had to be added, that language had to be added as far as the additional steps that have to be taken anytime there is a student suspension, expulsion, mandatory reassignment, any of those kind of things, whether it's a short-term suspension, long-term suspension, those steps all have to be completed by the school administration whenever there is a suspension. So basically they put in place some more steps that have to happen with every suspension. And then eventually we get down to the part that actually addresses the preschool through 2nd grade students. And again, we're recommending that we adopt that language, not that our intent would be that we were going to suspend more preschool through 2nd grade students. I think our goal is always to keep students in school. And, but again, this is a tool that is there in those situations where there really would be a violent behavior. And I think it's in the district's best interest to adopt that language so that if that situation does come along, you would have the tool in place to deal with that. But again, the idea is not that we're going to suspend more students. It's really just that we're going to put the language in place. If we do have a situation, we've got the ability to deal with it. So that's the overview of that one, and the language changed there. And again, it's a fairly extensive policy, so. And there are several different things that are changed, but most of it, again, is changing those guidelines and then changing the criteria for suspension of those pre-K through 2nd graders. Questions around that? All right. And finally, we get to the last one, graduation requirements. And again, this is one of those add-ons that really doesn't have anything to do with our graduation requirements. It really has to do with this language that is down here at the bottom Notwithstanding any other provision of this policy, a student who is or was under the jurisdiction of a juvenile court and placed in out-of-home care at any time during the student's high school enrollment shall be eligible to graduate from the district if the student at any point in time has enrolled in high school in the district, and number two, the student has met the minimum graduation requirements established by state law. So, minimum state requirements require 200 credits. We require 240 credits. So again, this is a situation where you could have a student who, was in a juvenile court system, placed out of the home, and that student then would be eligible to graduate with 200 credits rather than the 240 that we would require for other students. So again, that's state mandated. Doesn't necessarily, align with everything that we would think, but, it is. And again, there's probably certain situations where it makes perfect sense that that's what we would want to do. There are probably other cases where it maybe doesn't necessarily make sense that we're graduating with our regular graduates at 240 and we're graduating with this individual at 200, but it is what we're required to do. Any questions? Fun stuff. All right.
All right, thank you very much. On to action items. Subjects 7.1, 6 to 12, ELA resource adoption. Mrs. Kara Kuehl.
Okay, so just to recap for this, your vote is to approve the allocation of up to $124,000 in federal CLSD grant funds for us to partner with TNTP in the 26-27 school year. As a reminder, this partnership and the budget allocation were approved by the state as part of the CLSD grant funding, so it will not have an impact on our district budget. Your approval tonight would allow us to utilize those funds to really kick off that resource adoption project with our secondary ELA team next year.
Do we have any questions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the use of up to $124,000 in comprehensive literacy state development grant funds to partner with TNTP for the 26-27 school year to deliver secondary professional learning and support the selection of high-quality instructional materials to pilot in the 27-28 school year.
Second by Ms. Wilson. Discussion. Seeing none, may proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Item number 7.2, the 2026-27 Student Handbook Updates. Dr. Stevens.
Thank you. Again, the motion tonight is to approve the suggested changes to the 26-27 student handbook. And I would say pending the approval of those items that are in the policies that are still kind of on the table through the August meeting. And any adjustments to those policies would be reflected in the changes. But other than that, everything else that was presented tonight.
Any questions? Ms. Albers.
So I have a question first. So this motion would cover the fact that the policies might be approved because it's as presented, correct? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2026-2027 student handbook updates as presented.
Second by Ms. Wilson. Discussion. Seeing none, I proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item 7.3, 7180 Multicultural Education, Mr. Matt Fisher.
The exciting part about this is there's only two of them. This first policy deals with multicultural education. Actually, when Dr. Levos and Dr. Palmer reviewed this, they felt like a fairly extensive changes were needed, so they did some rewriting and shuffling of this multicultural policy. They included some of the language that was there previously, but added some new language that better represented and actually in a more clear format the ideals behind our multicultural education. Questions around that?
Ms. Albers, do you have a question?
I'd like to make a motion to approve policy 7180, multicultural education as presented.
Second by Ms. Wilson. Discussion. Seeing none, you may proceed to a vote. Motion passes.
Okay, policy 7212, dealing with the school day. Again, there was a fairly significant rewrite of this because in effect it said before that all of our grade levels were going to have the same day, and that is not what we are doing. And so the new language that's in there basically is representative of the fact that, you know, we have the same day in our elementary buildings. From elementary building to elementary building, we have the same day across our middle school buildings, and then we have school days that are, I guess, representative of what the needs are in our different high school buildings. So that was the change in the language, and then again, just a clarification, regardless of what the school day might look like, the staff day was going to be represented by that 8 hours.
Questions? At this time, I'd entertain a motion. Ms. Albers.
I'd like to make a motion to approve policy 7212, school day as presented.
Second by Ms. Wilson. Discussion. Seeing none, proceed to a vote. Motion passes. Okay, on to item 8.1, Superintendent Report, Mr. Matt Fisher.
All right, about talked out. Okay, one of the things, since we've talked about some financial information this evening, I wanted to just share that, you know, we had, as Mr. Harden and I had, you know, started down the financial budget piece for this year, one of the things that we were able to do was actually get some feedback in terms of where our district was in comparison to other districts through some research that had been done as part of the Committee on Finances that the state has, and I guess I just wanted to share that what we got back was that Grand Island has really done a very good job of, you know, spending considerably less than some of our like-sized schools in terms of our overall expenditure growth over the last few years. And so again, I think that's just a credit to the work that all of us have done in terms of recognizing where we could be more efficient and really trying to do some things there. And so again, just wanted to share that, you know, with the board and the public that I think we are in a good place. And even though we're going to maximize the authority that we're given, because I think that's the most prudent thing for us to do financially, that doesn't mean that we're spending more. Actually, what we're doing is I think spending less than most of our like-sized colleagues. So kudos to us for that. One of the things I wanted to make sure that you guys had caught up on is the Gish Band had the opportunity to be in D.C. for the 4th of July. They were supposed to get to march in a big nationally televised parade that unfortunately they canceled because of the heat. But the band did end up getting the chance to march in a smaller parade, so they did get the chance to march and perform. And I think overall had a really good trip. Obviously, DC, there's a lot of great things to see and do, and I think they had a really good trip, despite the disappointment of not getting to be in the one parade. Dr. Stevens had talked a lot about the different student programs we had going on throughout these summer months so far. I think one of the other things that a lot of people don't realize all of the things that are taking place during the summer months, but our L4L team has been working, tirelessly throughout these past couple months in terms of their task force, their curriculum work, getting things ready. We've got a positive supports conference that's coming up here on the 22nd and 23rd that will involve teams from each of our buildings. Obviously, earlier on, we did curriculum work with teams from each of our buildings. Our math materials are all here, and I think Angela can verify that they've all been sorted and they've been sent out to the buildings. So we should be in a good place as far as getting our new math curriculum up and going. One of the other big events that we've got coming up here in this month is the 28th. We have our lead retreat, where basically we bring all of our leadership of all of our different departments and buildings together for a day, and that's coming up. And before you know it, we'll have Welcome Back on the 5th, so the afternoon of August 5th. So if you don't have anything better to do, it's always a good time. We've got a great speaker coming, and that's not me. We've actually got a real speaker coming to do a presentation for us. Always an exciting time. Just exciting. It's just the energy that we get when we get all of our staff back together, and that's always kind of a fun time. And then, before we really get back to the next board meeting, we're going to have school going. The 12th, we're bringing in our kindergarten, our 6th grade, and our 9th grade, and then on the 13th, we've got the whole crew back in the swing of things. So summer is fast winding down. That is my report.
All right, well, thank you very much. All right, notification of upcoming board meetings.